Now that we know a little bit about how masking works, let's take a look at a real-world scenario where we need a bit more precision when it comes to working with a mask. And what I want to do with this portrait is I want to first select the subject. We'll do that using the Quick Select tool. Then I want to create a mask. And I want to refine the edges of the mask using our masking panel controls. And also, we'll look at how we can paint onto the mask using our brush tool. Well, let's start off using the Quick Select tool. You'll find that in the Tools panel. Now, with this tool, sometimes what you'll want to do is position your cursor over your image and change the brush size. You can do that by pressing the right bracket key to create a larger brush. Sometimes it's helpful to have a large brush and to go over your image quickly, and then next to go back with a smaller brush and to really work on the edges. So here I'm just going over the photograph with a really big brush in order to work quickly, yet that doesn't allow me to select everything that I need to select. So next what I'll do is decrease the brush size. You can do so by pressing the left bracket key. Then here with the smaller brush, I'll make sure that I'm selecting the hair. Also want to make sure I'm selecting the subject all the way to the edge there. And the hand, that's good. This side of the photograph needs some help too. So I'll just patiently paint over these areas in order to make all these selections. If there's an area that you need to deselect, well, you can always do so by holding on the Option key on a Mac, Alt on Windows. And in this case, I'm going to press Option and click and paint over the train tracks here. I don't need those as part of the selection. All right, well, great. Well, with this image, it's going to be a little bit tricky, right? Let's zoom in just a bit. The reason it's going to be tricky is because we have all of this hair. Our edge isn't very defined there, so we'll need to fix that up. Let's take a look at how we can do that. Rather than using Refine Edge here, what we're going to do is simply click to add or create a layer mask. Now that we have this layer mask, we can see that Quick Select did a decent job, but we want to make this even better. To do that, double-click on the mask itself. Next, you'll notice that you have an option to refine the mask edge. This is identical to refining the selection edge, which you can choose up here, except the advantage of doing this on a mask is that you can always modify it later. So here we'll click on Mask Edge to open up the dialog. We already know how this dialog works. Here I'll view this on Transparency. Next, typically it's helpful to turn on Smart Radius and to crank up your radius a little bit there. That makes those edges much better. Then we may need to increase these sliders a bit. Now, because there's hair involved, Smooth and Feather will want to keep pretty low. Contrast will help us to define the edge a bit more. And then sometimes you may need to shift the edge just a touch in order to bring that in. Another thing that you can do is you can use this tool here. It's called the Refine Radius tool. If you click and paint over areas, it can help Photoshop to pay attention to those and to refine the edge selection in those areas. Here, when we click on our preview checkbox, we can see the before and then now the after. The edges look much better. In order to apply the refinements to the mask, simply click OK. So here what this has done is it's made our mask even better. And the great thing about working with a mask is that we can always adjust this. In other words, here you can see I've clicked into the mask. I can grab my brush tool, and with the brush tool I can decide, you know what, I really want to get rid of a few of those little hairs that are flying out on the edges there. Or maybe I'll notice that I've made a mistake. Here I can paint with white in order to bring in a little bit more detail on the shoulder. I noticed that my selection wasn't very good right there. In this way, we can fine-tune this mask so that we can achieve really good results. Speaking of that, I noticed that there's an area of the hair right here which isn't very good. So I'll use this brush and I'll paint with black this time to conceal that. I just want to conceal this little portion of the photograph back here. Again, in this way, we have this little bit of extra control. We can remove portions of the image or bring more in, and this gives us extra flexibility. The other thing that's great about working with the mask is that you can always temporarily disable the mask. In other words, let's say that you've decided, you know what, I actually want to have the subject in this environment. Well, you can undo the mask, so to speak, by temporarily disabling it. Let me show you two shortcuts that you can use in order to do that. The first involves right-clicking or control-clicking on the mask. The top menu item allows you to choose Disable Layer Mask. Right-click or control-click again, and you can bring that back. Now, that is something that you can't do with selections. Once you've selected the background and deleted it, you can't bring it back. With a mask, you can. Another way to do the same thing is to hold down the Shift key and then to click on the mask. And here you can see I can turn that mask on and off by simply shift clicking on the mask icon in the Layers panel. All right, well, to reiterate a few things that we learned here, we started off using the Quick Select tool. We created a selection over the image. Next, with that selection active, we clicked on the Add Layer Mask icon to create a mask based on our selection. Then, we double-clicked the mask to open up our Properties panel and to control our settings for our mask. In particular, we looked at how we could refine the mask edge by clicking on this button here. And then, last but not least, we explored how we can work on our mask further by targeting the mask and then by painting with our brush tool and painting with black or white to either reveal or conceal portions of the mask. And then as a little bit of a bonus, I highlighted a shortcut which you can use in order to enable or disable the mask. And I think the best shortcut is to hold down the Shift key and then to click on the mask icon so that you can then change your view or enable or disable the mask.